Pompeii and Herculaneum shared a disaster, but only one hit a library. When Vesuvius erupted in 79 AD, superheated gases carbonized hundreds of papyrus rolls in a seaside mansion now called the Villa of the Papyri, turning a living bookshelf into black cylinders that crumble at a touch, and for 2 centuries antiquarians tried knives, pastes, and patience to unroll them, losing more text than they saved. The modern solution is the opposite. Don't open anything, image everything. So the project begins with X-ray micro-CT that resolves each scroll as a 3-dimensional maze of warped, crushed, and fused layers, then builds a computational geometry of those layers so pages can be unwrapped into coherent surfaces. The problem is that the ink is carbon and the papyrus is carbon. So ordinary contrast fails and the page looks blank, which is why the pipeline leans on tiny physical traces left by ink. Micro-fractures in fibers, differential compaction, and subtle changes in how the sheet scatters X-rays where a brush once laid strokes. Engineers and papyrologists segment the internal laminae, generate triangulated meshes that hug the scroll's curls and tears, and flatten those meshes while preserving texture. On those textures, machine learning models trained with expert-labeled Greek look for the faint, mottled crackle that corresponds to letter forms, propose candidates, and then test them against language priors and the ductus, the stroke order, and curves expected of a first-century hand. The first public proof that this could work at scale arrived when a student, Luke Farrader, found the Greek word porphyrus, purple, on a sealed roll in late 2023, showing that texture alone could recover ink. The effort then widened through the Vesuvius Challenge, an open benchmark that released scans and prizes to push the pipeline from words to lines to paragraphs. And by early 2024, a team, Farrator with Youssef Nader and Julian Schilliger, virtually unwrapped long regions and recovered thousands of characters. What emerged on the virtual page sounded like a voice we already knew from Herculaneum. An Epicurean author, very likely Philodemus, reasoning in polished Hellenistic Greek about pleasure, value, and judgment using concrete examples, perfumes, food, and the color purple, not to celebrate luxury, but to separate sensory clarity from social hype. The argument insists that rarity does not manufacture worth, that desire is a habit shaped by opinion, and that durable pleasure lives in freedom from fear, stable friendships, and manageable needs. A philosophy that once circulated among educated Romans on the Bay of Naples and now survives in a charred hand that modern software can finally read. Identifying Philodemus matters because it anchors the Villa S function. 18th and 19th century unrolled papyri already held his treatises on music, on poems, on rhetoric, and ethical works tied to Epicurus's school, and the new passages confirm the library as a curated philosophical corpus, probably assembled for Lucius Calpurnius Piso, Julius Caesar's father-in-law and the likely patron of the house. The tech stack is exacting rather than magical. Scanners use high-energy micro-CT and, where possible, phase contrast to highlight density gradients at tens of microns. Segmentation algorithms map sheets that have been concertinaed, blistered, and glued by heat. Unwrapping pipelines construct conformal or near-isometric maps that keep fibers from tearing computationally. Ink detectors combine supervised CNNs with texture operators tuned to papyrus fiber orientation, then fuse overlapping tiles to suppress false positives. Candidate letters are ranked and stitched into lines, and at each step papyrologists reject readings that violate Greek letter forms, spacing, or syntax. No model output is accepted without a human chain of reasoning that includes paleographic fits and contextual sense. That human-in-the-loop discipline turns AI found a word into papyrology that other scholars can check because meshes texture renders, and transcriptions are published for debate. The scholarly payoff is already substantive. coherent stretches that discuss whether scarcity heightens pleasure passages, that taxonomize desires and warn against prestige goods, and marginal signs that mark rhetorical pivots, all consistent with Epicurean classroom practice. The method's limits are equally clear. Some scrolls are too fused to separate cleanly. Some zones are featureless carbon even under phase contrast. Letter probabilities remain fragile at edges and folds, and many readings stay provisional until adjacent lines stabilize. But these are engineering ceilings that improve with better scans, meshes, and training data. Conservation ethics shape every choice. No scroll is physically unrolled. Each is treated as a unique 3D object with recorded tears and crimps. And the publication preserves geometry, so a different lab can attempt a better unwrapping without rescanning or touching the original. The historical stakes are high because the villa seems to have held more than one library. Rooms already excavated skew Greek and Epicurean, but other wings may contain Latin books we barely know by name, from lost histories to literary criticism. Even within Epicureanism, principal works of Epicurus survive only as fragments and summaries. So a single recovered roll can shift what textbooks say about ancient ethics, aesthetics, and science. Beyond Herculaneum, the pipeline points outward to charred papyri from Egyptian rubbish mounds, burned medieval codices and palimpsests where older text hides beneath later writing. Anywhere ink subtly modifies substrate texture, this geometry plus signal approach can make the invisible legible. The social architecture of the project, open datasets, prize milestones, shared code, pulls in people who would never walk into a papyrus lab. Medical imaging experts tune, denoising computer vision researchers improve layer tracking, classical philologists annotate letter forms, and the crosstalk is what turned scattered demos into sustained reading. The story also lands on human feeling. When the first intact letters from a sealed roll appeared, seasoned researchers cried because 2,000 years of silence broke in the author's own syntax, not as a quote filtered by later hands, but as brushstrokes still imprinted in fiber. That is the real symmetry. AI does not replace scholarship. It returns material for scholarship to do what only it can do: weigh context, resolve ambiguity, and argue about meaning. Looking forward, the path to full columns and entire scrolls runs through incremental wins, tighter segmentation on fused regions, better mesh parameterization to avoid stretching letters, richer training sets labeled by expert paleographers, and continuous publication so claims harden or fall under scrutiny. And the philosophical content we are already reading speaks across time with a pragmatism that feels modern. Pleasure clarified rather than performed. Goods judged by how they actually register in a life rather than by price or fashion. Friendship and calm elevated over acquisition. If we recover the rest of this author's corpus from the sealed rolls, Roman intellectual history will look less like a list of names and more like a set of seminars in a seaside villa, where a Greek teacher tailored Epicurus for Roman ears. The wonder lies not in the word AI, but in the chain that runs from a volcano, violence to a lab, restraint, charcoal that would shatter at a breath turned into meshes and textures, textures turned into letters, letters into sentences, and sentences back into a voice that expected to be read aloud to friends. If you want the next step as it lands, the moment when a blurred band resolves into a full column and an argument rounds another corner, subscribe for our evidence-first follow-ups on how scans, meshes, and expert readings are turning the villa's black rolls one virtual page at a time into recovered philosophy.